So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's WEConnect International webinar. My name is Maggie Berry. I'm the Executive Director for WEConnect International here in Europe, and I'm delighted that you've joined us for today's webinar, Demystifying the Menopause, Power, Potency and Pizzazz, which we are presenting during World Menopause Month. Our presenter today is Katie Day. She is a leading voice on menopause in the workplace in the UK, and she runs RDP International, a training and consultancy and speaking company, and they deliver a suite of programs under the banner of Midlife Matters. Katie is a member of the British Menopause Society and works with leading clinical partners in Harley Street and UCLH. In today's session, Katie is going to be sharing more information about the menopause, about female hormones in general, and about why we feel the way we feel, and much, much more. To keep background noise to minimum, I'm asking all participants to keep themselves on mute. Please do use the chat functionality to ask any questions, or if you want to contribute to any of the discussions. Katie's probably going to talk for about 40 to 45 minutes. The session is being recorded, so you'll be able to listen back to it again. So Katie, thank you very much for presenting for us for today, and it's over to you. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Maggie. Yes, so it is World Menopause Awareness Month with World Menopause Awareness Day, which was last Friday, the 18th of October, which found me going all over the UK, giving talks and raising awareness, which was fantastic. So what are we going to be looking at and talking about in the next 40-45 minutes or so? A little bit about my story. What is the menopause? So, because hands up, I actually didn't realise what it was. The fact that it only lasts one day, and I can hear you, I can see you with your eyes raising to the ceiling saying, what is this woman talking about? Yes, it is a very long day, but it is just one day. We're either perimenopausal or postmenopausal, but I'll explain a bit more about that as we go through. The misdiagnosis that happens to women, and a bit about our support options from both a medical and a non-medical point of view, and a bit about how actually the menopause is probably overdue for a serious PR makeover, because it can be one of the most fantastic times of our lives. I did a TEDx talk a couple of weeks ago called The Roar of the Menopause, where I hoped to try and change people's perceptions of the postmenopausal woman and actually realise how powerful and potent we are. So let's get cracking. This is one of my favourite quotes from David Bowie. Aging is that extraordinary process where you become the person you always should have been. I absolutely love that quote, and I recognise as a postmenopausal woman that I find myself having far less invested in the opinions of others, which is a really good place to be. I was able to finally shrug off a big part of my good girl syndrome, where I was desperate to please everybody else to the detriment of me. So there is something actually quite liberating about stepping into that power and potency as a postmenopausal woman. So a little bit about my story. Sorry, I double clicked there. A little bit about my story, my experience. That's my first school photograph when I was 5 years old. So not only, somebody appears to have lost their sound. Can everybody still hear me? Can you hear me, Maggie? Is everything okay? I can still hear you, Katie. Yeah, you're fine. I'll keep going. So that's my first school photograph at 5 years old. So not only at 5 years old did I start school, but at 5 years old, I also started my periods. So I was a very, very early developer. I spent a week in Great Ormond Street Hospital having various tests, and I was quite quaintly referred to as being hormonally precocious, which was an interesting title to project onto a 5-year-old child. But that was me. I was way, way ahead of my time. I was born with far more ovaries, far more eggs in my ovaries than the average woman. So I started puberty at a very, very young age. And I was still perimenopausal at the age of 56. So I had just over half a century being dictated to by my hormones, which made my childhood really quite difficult and quite challenging. I kind of grew up as a child and a teenager hating my body and being embarrassed and ashamed by my body because of what it was doing to me. And it made me feel not part of the gang, not part of everybody else. I kind of stuck out. But I got through that, got through my adult life with all of my hormones on a route march. And then just when I thought everything was okay, wham, right between the eyes, and menopause hit me like a brick. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't realize the plethora of potential experiences that are part and parcel of the perimenopause and the fact that the perimenopause can start anything up to 10 years before that cut-off point of the menopause. And they can start off quite mild. We don't really realise it's difficult to hook them onto the perimenopause because they could be down to so many other reasons. So to hang on to an element of my sanity as I was going through that phase, I actually gave the experiences that I was going through some different names just to kind of get me through. So I called them the menopause marauders. Those little troublesome creatures that come up and hit you between the eyes and sneak out from behind a tree and under a rock when you're least expecting them. The first one is itchy. That comes as quite as a surprise to women of why our skin suddenly becomes really itchy. I'm not that person. However, she did turn up on a regular basis. I tried to keep her under on a scale of 1 to 10 under a 5. And a lot of the time I was successful, but quite a few times I wasn't successful. So I felt as though I was changing personality and I didn't know what was happening to me or why. We kind of recognize that one. Everybody kind of associates the hot flushes and the night sweats with the menopause, and not every woman will experience them. Some women will actually go through the whole menopausal transition without a single hot flush or night sweat, and others don't, and I didn't. So I suffered with those a lot during the day and at night. And of course, having them at night means that you don't sleep because it's window open, duvet off, 5 minutes later, window shut, duvet on, 5 minutes later, duvet off, window open. And this goes on all night. I probably had about 2.5 years of not sleeping properly throughout the night, which of course then leads to that the next day when you go into the world and try to pretend that you're a normal person in full control of everything that's going on. And actually inside your head, you feel as though you are losing it and you're anything but in control. And that awful feeling of your eyelids when all you want to do is just shut them, which creates sort of a brain fog, which is really, really quite difficult. We all know that sleep deprivation very, very quickly can have a devastating impact on the whole aspect of our life. You know, anybody who's had children, I don't, but, you know, talking to parents of either gender, those first few months or sleepless nights, it doesn't take long for sleep deprivation to have a huge impact on everything else in our life. So that constantly being disrupted with hot flushes and night sweats can be devastating. That's not a lot of fun. And let's face it, we're already feeling slightly irritable, and it really isn't helping, but we'll come on to why that happens. That can be mild to utterly overwhelming. And for me, at times, it did become utterly overwhelming, which was really, really difficult to contend with. And it can be the invisible emotional impact of going through this transition that can be the most discombobulating for women. And because it's invisible and because we don't fully understand why it's happening, it can be one of the most difficult ones to actually explain and verbalize to those around us. So people around us just see the woman they used to know changing, and they don't fully understand why she's changing, and then we don't actually understand why we're changing either. So this can be what the emotional impact, the lack of self-esteem, the depression can be the most difficult aspect for a lot of women. So that can be really hard to deal with. That one can be really scary. You know, I've been running training courses for half my life. I'm going to be 60 a week on Saturday. So I have about 9 days left of being a woman in her 50s. I'm actually looking forward to being a woman in her 60s because I feel stronger, brighter, and more powerful than I've ever felt in my life. But I've been training for half my life now. So I could be delivering a training course that I've done for 10, 15, 20 years and in mid-sentence completely forget what I was talking about. And that is really, really frightening. I was convinced I was getting Alzheimer's, and I hear so many women who are convinced too that they are getting Alzheimer's or dementia. It's really, really frightening, that forgetfulness. Then we have, the grumpy, which again can be quite mild, and it can go to really quite severe, where we just lose control of what we're saying, and the aggression can go through the roof. There are times when I really thought I should not be driving now because my road rage has really got slightly out of control. I need to go home and lie down in a darkened room, quiet, and actually just not speak to anybody. And then of course when they all turn up on the same day, we can actually think that we are going mad. We are not going mad, but that is what it can feel like. So mine really kicked in at the start of the new relationship, which wasn't the best time for the perimenopause symptoms to really hit me squarely between the eyes, because one of the potential impacts is painful sex, and we'll come on to why that is. So let's look at what is the menopause. It comes from two Greek words, men meaning month and pausis meaning cessation. So actually the menopause is, from a biological point of view, when we stop having monthly periods, and we stop having monthly periods because our ovaries have run out of eggs. The eggs that we were born with have died. We are all born with a finite number of eggs. The average means that the majority of women will start puberty somewhere between 11 and 14 years old, and the majority, 75 to 80% of women, will be postmenopausal between 50 to 52. There are women who fall either side of that. I started much earlier and I finished much later. Some women start later and finish much earlier. But if we go on the average, we have about 35 to 40 years of being fertile. The term the menopause was actually termed by a French physician nearly 200 years ago, who wrote a book about the menopause. And in his book, he said the menopause is a natural life transition for every woman. And as physicians, it is our responsibility to support women through this process. He was way, way, way ahead of his time, considering that was nearly 200 years ago. So there are two stages, either perimenopausal, so that is the time from when the experiences start, to either 12 or 24 months after your last period. Now, this is assuming that you are having natural periods. So you don't have a Mirena coil and you're not taking the continuous contraceptive pill. So if you are having natural monthly periods and you are under the age of 50 and you haven't had a period for 12 months and 1 day will be your menopause. 12 months and 2 days, you are then deemed by the medical profession to be postmenopausal. If you are 50 or over, then wait 24 months. So 24 months and 1 day will be your menopause. 24 months and 2 days, you are then deemed to be postmenopausal. This is just something the medical profession use as a marker to understand where a woman is in terms of the menopausal transition process. Which is why, from a medical point of view, the menopause is 1 day. We are either perimenopausal or we are postmenopausal. Once we are postmenopausal, we remain postmenopausal. That's it. We've run out of eggs and we are now non-fertile women. But that's really what it means. So a few of the stats. As we know, about 52% of the population around the world are women. Roughly 57% of that 52% are between the ages of 40 and 60, which are the key menopausal transition decades. The majority of women will, at some time in their 40s, will start the perimenopausal transition. And for the majority of women, by the time they are 60, they are then postmenopausal. And it is something that every woman around the planet has in common. Pregnancy and childbirth isn't. Not every woman gives birth, but every woman, if she lives old enough, will experience the menopause. So it is something that is a universal experience of women around the world. And in a survey done in the UK back in 2017, 1 in 4 women consider leaving their job or career during this transition due to the severity of symptoms. So we do a lot of work with organisations on workplace best practice, upskilling line managers, looking at reasonable adjustments, etc., because it can be a difficult time. And why would an organisation invest in a woman at the beginning of her career and then desert her when she is probably offering all of that, her best with all that experience behind her? So our hormones and what they do, God bless them. Let's have a look. So estrogen is our dominant hormone. Men also have estrogen, but our dominant hormone is estrogen. Their dominant hormone is testosterone. So if we look at what estrogen does for us, it helps in the development of our breasts at puberty. It thickens the endometrium, so the womb. So the womb can hang on to an egg when it's released from the ovary, regulates the menstrual cycle, increases vaginal lubrication, increases bone formation, and it accelerates the metabolism, which is why a lot of girls at puberty, when the sex hormones kick in, they will start to lose the puppy fat, because the sudden surge of estrogen throughout a teenage girl's body means her metabolism speeds up. And that's why. So what estrogen does is spike in the first half of our menstrual cycle to stimulate the ovaries to release an egg into the womb. The womb thickens from 4 millimeters to between 8 to 10 millimeters, so it can hang on to the egg to wait to see if it gets fertilized. and that's what that happens. So what happens when our estrogen starts to dip in the perimenopausal transition? Because we have estrogen receptors throughout our whole body, also in our brain, our heart, our lungs, our joints, throughout our whole body, when estrogen starts to dip, it can have an impact on the whole body. So because of the estrogen receptors in our brain, it means our verbal memory can be affected. Our mood and swings can be affected. So this is what has an impact on our emotional well-being. It's the dip in estrogen. It helps to balance our hunger, so we can end up having the wrong message being sent to the brain that we're hungry, so it can lead to overeating. It helps to maintain our density of our bones, which is why osteoporosis is such a big risk for the postmenopausal woman, because as estrogen dips, it starts to leach the calcium out of our bones. So that's quite a big risk for the postmenopausal woman. It also helps to protect our arteries, which is why when we are fertile, our risk of heart disease is quite low. It's much higher in men in the ages of 20 to 50. Post 50, the risk of heart disease reverses, and it's much higher in women than it is in men. And that is because we lose our levels of the estrogen. So we lose our heart protective hormone. And heart disease is a bigger killer of postmenopausal women than breast cancer. Twice as many women are affected by heart disease in the UK, and 7 times as many women are affected by heart disease postmenopausally in the US. So it is something that we need to take seriously. Our second hormone, which is unique to women, is progesterone. Progesterone is there to help to balance estrogen and to keep our womb healthy. So what it does, progesterone kicks in the second half of our menstrual cycle. So if the egg that the womb is hanging onto is not fertilized, the thickened lining of the womb needs to be broken down and brought back to 4 millimeters. Because if it's left thickened for too long, it increases the possibility that we may at some point get womb cancer. So progesterone's job is to break down that thickened lining of the womb and get rid of it to keep the womb healthy. So that it spikes in the second half of the menstrual cycle, and then when we have our period, what we're bleeding out is the broken down thickened lining of the womb, and then the next month the whole process starts all over again. So that's the role of progesterone. So what happens when it dips? Because it helps to balance the emotional impact of a spike in estrogen. Some women are very sensitive to spikes in estrogen, which causes premenstrual syndrome, PMT, PMS. So progesterone helps to balance that. So when it starts to dip, that can also have an impact on our emotional well-being. Testosterone is a very important hormone for women, and it's one that gets forgotten. It's really important, as important for us as it is for men. We only have about 10% of the levels, but it is very important. What testosterone gives us is our energy and drive in life. And what it does is give us our mental alertness and focus, that ability to process information quickly, that speed of thought, that clarity, that get up and go in the morning, that adrenaline, that motivation, our physical strength. It also is responsible for our sex drive and levels of physical desire. So that can also get impacted. Still under research, but it may also help prevent heart disease, and it can reduce the risk of breast cancer. So it's a vitally important hormone for women. So what happens when it starts to dip is our mental alertness may be affected. So estrogen is the brain fog. Testosterone is that mental alertness. Our physical energy will be compromised. It also helps our body distribute weight from the energy we take in from food evenly. So when it starts to dip, that process goes a little bit haywire, and we can end up with fat around our middle. And exactly the same happens for men, the middle age spread, because their testosterone starts to dip at about the same time our testosterone starts to dip. It's a gentle decline which happens with both genders, late 20s, early 30s. And it kind of gathers speed as we both men and women approach midlife. So it's really, really important for us to look at our testosterone. And this can be really, really frustrating understanding what's going on. So if we look at the life cycle of our female hormones, that lovely safe green area when we're children, we've only really appreciated just how wonderful it was when we were in it. Then puberty kicks in, and then for about 35 to 40 years, in my case 50, we're in the red zone when our hormones are on a route march and actually having a huge impact on us. Then postmenopausally, we don't quite go back to the green, but at least we come out of the red and things do start to settle down. So let's look at what we have. At the beginning, we have something called DHEA, this is the same in both teenage girls and boys. It's the precursor to the sex hormone. So it gets the body ready to start to accept the sex hormones that are about to kick in. For us, it's estrogen is the first one. So you can see that it spikes in puberty. Then if you look in the fertile years, it stays fairly stable. Then just look at what is happening to estrogen during the perimenopausal transition. It's all over the place. And this is what causes the problems, because 1 minute it will spike and then it will dip, then it will spike, then it will dip. So now the nice guidelines are, if a woman is 45 or above, do not give her a blood test to check her hormone levels, because the readings will be inconclusive and it is a waste of time, because they are on such a roller coaster. You could have a blood test at 10 in the morning, another one at 4 in the afternoon, and get 2 completely different results. So for any woman 45 or above, nice guidelines now are, do not give a woman a blood test. Shut up and listen when a woman comes to see you as a physician, and listen, because she will tell you where she is in her menopausal transition, because you can see the roller coaster that's going on there. Then we have progesterone. So you can see it spikes and it dips, it spikes and it dips, it spikes and it dips. So that's what it's doing for our whole fertile years. Its job is to normalize the spike in estrogen and keep our womb healthy. Then you can see post-menopause, it virtually disappears. Then we have testosterone. And the pattern for testosterone is exactly the same in men as it is for women. The fact is we have about 10% of the amount that men have, but actually it peaks at the same time and it starts to decline at the same rate at the same time. So if you look in our fertile years between the dark blue testosterone and the red estrogen, through our fertile years you can see they're fairly well balanced. Then look at what happens post-menopausally. There's a great big gap because our estrogen plummets so dramatically. So post-menopausally, what women can have is something called testosterone dominance. And what that means is in some women, we can start to lose hair from our head that rather magically and mysteriously ends up around our chins, which is wonderful. And then we also start to get what we may get in puberty, which is acne, oily skin. So everything that the surge in testosterone at puberty causes, we can get a repeat of that post-menopausally because of our testosterone dominance. Not every woman will have this, but the only way to rectify that is to reintroduce estrogen into the body to bridge that gap. So you can see how different it is. So we have all of this going on inside us for roughly 35 to 40 years, which is quite phenomenal, really. The body just gets on with it, knows what it's doing. The misdiagnosis that can happen is the amount of women who are misdiagnosed with depression and put on antidepressants. And this happens a lot, not only at the menopause, it can happen to women throughout their whole fertile years. Antidepressants will help with hot flushes, they will help with mood. What they won't do, however, is deal and correct the underlying reason for all of the symptoms, which is an imbalance of hormones. If the real reason is dealt with, the imbalance of hormones is corrected, then the majority of symptoms tend to fall away by default. So it is quite, there's been a lot in the press recently. I get news alerts every day on the menopause of the amount of gynecologists who are tearing their hair out, frankly, with frustration and verging on anger of how many women are being misdiagnosed and put on mind-altering drugs and not having the underlying reason corrected, which is an imbalance of hormones. So that is something that happens a lot to women. So how can we support ourselves then moving forward? Supplements are one way. The word of caution, just because we can pop into a health food shop on the high street and buy things over the counter and we think it is in inverted commas natural, that equals safe. That isn't necessarily so. If we just look at vitamins, unless our body is deficient in a particular vitamin, we are probably just creating very expensive urine. Because if we take a vitamin supplement, it is only going to have an impact if we are deficient. Otherwise, the body will just excrete it and get rid of it. Very few of us are deficient in vitamins because our diet is so good. There are 2 exceptions in the vitamin area. Those 2 exceptions are vitamin D3. We can get vitamin D3 from our food, but it's quite difficult to get the levels that we need for our health from our food because the best source is sunshine, which this time of the year becomes increasingly more challenging. So vitamin D3 is a very good supplement for both men and women to take there are a lot of people in the UK who are vitamin D deficient. The darker your skin, the less vitamin D it absorbs. A lot of people, due to shift work, etc., don't have access to windows or are asleep during the day, they work at night. So there are a lot of people who are vitamin D deficient. What vitamin D does is help to support the immune system. It also helps to support our body in extracting the calcium from the food that we eat, which goes to support our bone density and our bone health. So vitamin D, particularly for postmenopausal women, is a really, really important vitamin, and it is one that is worth supplementing. You can pop into your doctor and ask for a vitamin D spot blood test just to check your levels. So I recommend that's a good thing to do. Another vitamin that it's worth having your levels checked just to see where you are is vitamin B12, because low levels of vitamin B12 are one of the potential indicators of a risk of Alzheimer's and dementia in older age. It's not the only one, but it is one. So vitamin B12 is, again, check your levels, see where you are, because it's a very easy one to rectify if your levels are low. Other than that, if you are interested in taking supplements, I would urge you to work with a qualified nutritionist or a qualified herbalist, because there are potential contraindications. So work with somebody who's qualified in that area, who will be able to take a full medical history, be aware of any potential contraindications with any other medication that you're taking, and will be able to advise you on dosage and efficacy and safety. I would urge you try not to self-prescribe when it comes to something that you can just pop in and buy off the high street, because you may potentially be doing yourself more harm than good. There was a chap in the States last year who was taking green tea capsules, and his body didn't react well to that concentrated form of green tea that had been extracted and turned into a capsule, and within a couple of months he needed a liver transplant. So just because we can pop in and buy something, the vitamin and supplement industry isn't regulated the same way that the drug industry is. So please work with somebody who knows what they're talking about. There are some things that we can take. Red clover actually does have about 20 years of clinical trials to back up its efficacy and its safety. The contraindication with red clover, because it's a phytoestrogen, is if you are estrogen sensitive and you are at risk of estrogen receptive breast cancer or recovering from, then red clover is not recommended, because it is a phytoestrogen. It's a plant estrogen. So that is the contraindication for red clover. But if that isn't a concern for you, then red clover is a good supplement to take throughout the menopause. Sage can be very good to take, and sage has no contraindications. So that is safe to use. You can either use it as a supplement, dried in cooking, or sage leaves. So that can be a very good one to take as well. Maca root can be very good, MACA. Again, possible contraindications: estrogen receptive breast cancer, thyroid, and blood pressure. Maca root may interrupt those. So always work with somebody who knows what they're talking about. Same with essential oils, work with a qualified aromatherapist. These are really potent things, essential oils. So we really need to be careful in how we use them. There's some good ones for the menopausal transition. Sage, again, can help with hot flushes. Peppermint can help with hot flushes. Lavender can help with mood and emotional well-being. Rosemary can really, really help, again, with mood, with hot flushes, with boosting our immune system. There was a big study last year done on rosemary essential oil. Basil can help with mood, cognitive function, so how our brain thinks. Agnus castus and clary sage have long been kind of the go-to women's essential oils throughout our whole fertile years. Again, be used with caution, work with somebody who knows, because these are potent. Never put neat essential oil onto your skin. So if you're going to apply it to the skin, make sure you put it in a carrier oil, or you put it into your normal body lotion or something. Have an aromatherapy massage. I mean, please, you're getting a double whammy then. You're getting wonderful relaxation and you're getting the benefit of the essential oil. Oil burners in your sitting room, unless you have small pets, because the fumes from oil burners have a negative impact on the lungs and circulatory system of small pets. So please don't use an oil burner if you have a small pet. But if you don't, then oil burners can be good. A couple of drops in a bath, spray the room, put a few drops in a water bottle, etc. So there's lots of ways that we can use them. But again, use them with somebody who knows, because they're very, very strong. That's a picture of the Mediterranean, not Eastbourne, as somebody at the weekend when I was running a workshop thought that was Eastbourne. If only the South Downs looked that beautiful. And they do look beautiful, but not quite as beautiful as the Mediterranean, especially not today because it's raining. So we know what we should be doing. We know that if we work on the Mediterranean diet, regardless of gender and regardless of age, we're probably going to be pretty healthy. Meanwhile, back in the real world, but if we can stick to that as much as we possibly can, there are some things that it would be really good to try and keep to a minimum, if at all possible, for our long-term postmenopausal health. Packaged food. The more we can see the ingredients that we put into the food that we prepare and put into our mouths, the better. The odd packaged meal every now and again, that's not going to kill anybody, but to rely on them a lot as the higher percentage of your weekly food intake is probably not a good idea. The reason for that is because it's more difficult to control the levels of salt and sugar and chemicals that we're taking into the body. So it's a good idea to keep an eye on those three specifically. So try and ease off those if you can and not rely on them as a staple. If you're a meat eater, then try and go for organic rather than non-organic. It's better for the animal and it's better for us. Carbonated drinks, again, because of the sugar. Fat doesn't make us fat. The right fat helps us lose weight. The wrong fat won't, but the right fat is good for our heart, it's good for our brain, it's good for our joints. It keeps our arteries flexible and malleable, and they have a tendency to calcify as we get older. So keeping that plasticity in our heart arteries is a really, really good idea. And the right fats will help us do that. It is refined sugar that is the one that we need to try and keep to a minimum. And I say refined sugar because we have sugar in fruit and vegetables. We also have a lot of fiber in fruit and vegetables, which is why fruit and vegetables are so good for us, because the body knows how to process the sugar when it is in the form of getting the fiber as well. So it doesn't spike our insulin levels. If we take the sugar out of that and have that without the fiber, that is what spikes the insulin levels and is not good for us. So try and keep refined sugar to a minimum if you possibly can. Again, alcohol for the same reason. It has sugar. It can also make hot flushes worse, and it can act as a depressant, but not with every woman. I know some women who sail through the whole process can still drink alcohol absolutely fine. I can't. I've always been a cheap date. Postmenopausally, I'm even cheaper. I can't drink alcohol at all. My body just doesn't like it. So listen to your body. Your body will tell you everything you need to know. Just be still and quiet long enough to allow it to tell you what it wants and what it doesn't want. And the same for caffeine. I can only have 1 cup of coffee a day, and I have to eat it with food in the morning. If I drink coffee on an empty stomach, it actually gives me heart palpitations. So again, listen to your body. I know other women can have a double espresso before they go to bed and sleep through the night. So we're all different. So get to know what your body likes and what your body doesn't like. But looking after our nutrition postmenopausally is really important. At the British Menopause Conference that I went to in July this year, a gynecologist stood up and said, now because our life expectancy has increased, the majority of women will have more post-fertile years than fertile years. We could live half our life as a post-menopausal woman, and the other half is before we were fertile and fertile. So if we live to 100 and we're post-menopausal at 50, we have had half our life as a post-menopausal woman. But even without that, we are likely to have more post-reproductive years than reproductive years. So looking after our post-menopausal health is increasingly more important. So it's looking after our brain health, our heart health, and our bone health is really, really important. And we can do that through our diet. A really important thing to mention here are prunes. Really, really good. So dried prunes, eat between 5 to 6 a day. I'm lucky, I adore them. I call them the double B, the bowels and bones. We know that prunes look after our digestive system. They also look after our bones. There are 4 trials going on around the world right now to discover what it is about prunes that helps to support our bone health. So expect to see prune supplements in your health food store in the next few years. I would urge you not to buy the prune supplements, but to eat your prunes because it's much better for you. What it does, there was a trial done with NASA a few years ago with astronauts. Really impressive bone density increase after a year. Yeah, great. Most astronauts are still male. There are female, but it's still a male-dominated profession. And generally speaking, they are younger than the average menopausal woman. Last year, there was a trial done with menopausal women and prunes, and the average bone density increase after a year by eating 5 to 6 prunes a day was 6%. 6% bone density increase is a difference between having osteoporosis and not having osteoporosis. I know that because I had a bone scan when I first went on HRT. I had osteoporosis. 18 months later, I had another bone scan. My bone density increase was 6%. That was enough to take me out of having osteoporosis. So eat your prunes, they're good for you. CBD oil is something that's the latest trend in the Western world at the moment. Current findings show that there are no contraindications, so it is safe for people recovering from or at risk of estrogen receptive breast cancer. What it can do can help with chronic pain, can help reduce anxiety and depression, inflammation, oxidative stress. It may help promote a healthy weight, can have a positive impact on heart health, and to some women it completely gets rid of their hot flushes. If you are interested in trying CBD oil, I would urge you to do your research because it's the latest trendy thing. There are lots of people jumping on the bandwagon. Make sure that you're getting really, really, really good quality CBD oil and that it hasn't been diluted with something else. So do your research, but at the moment it is a safe thing that you might want to try because there are no contraindications at the moment. Always important to look after our emotional and physical well-being, particularly so through this transition. If we don't manage our stress, what that can happen, an overload of stress, it can actually increase osteoporosis because what it does is leach the calcium out of our bones, too much stress. So really important we look after our stress. Also, too much stress can end up with extra storage around the midriff. The dip in testosterone is doing that already. We really don't want to give it a helping hand. So reach out and ask for help. Find the stress management techniques that work for you. If meditation works for you, fantastic. Meditation irritates me. It actually makes me feel more stressed. What works for me is going for a walk along the beach. I'm very lucky that I live on the south coast. Find out what is good for you. Don't do what you think you should be doing because that's likely to make you feel even worse. Find what works for you and then try and find a routine that you can fit into your life because it's really important. Physical well-being, we may find that changes. Really important to do about 150 minutes a week, a mixture of cardiovascular and weight bearing. Weight bearing will help keep our bones strong for lower the risk of osteoporosis. We need to keep our heart and lungs healthy as well. Stretch, keep a strong core. That will help us out with our balance as we get older. So anything Tai Chi or martial arts and dancing are really good because they all also have a cognitive function as well because we have to learn movements. We have to learn choreography. It also exercises the brain as well as exercise the mind and the body. So anything like that. Whatever it is, find out what brings you joy and try and fit in something regularly into your weekly schedule if you can. Lots of other things we can do: acupuncture, homeopathy, hypnotherapy, meditation, mindfulness, kinesiology, all sorts of things. We're really, really lucky in the time that we live now that we have so much possibility open to us that our mothers and certainly our grandmothers did not have. So HRT, there's a lot of misinformation about HRT and a lot of fear, not only by women but also by physicians. There were 2 big studies, I'm sure you know, done in the early 2000s, one in the US, one in the UK, which created the banner headlines, HRT causes breast cancer. Both of those were severely flawed and have now been completely discredited. There was a lot of misinformation. The majority of women at start of trial were over the age of 60 and had other health concerns, including a BMI of 30 or above, type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. All of those have a much bigger impact on breast cancer than HRT. In 2012, Denmark did a really big study with women to look at breast cancer and HRT, and their conclusions were certain types of HRT slightly increases the risk, other types of HRT decreases the risk. HRT offers heart protection, bone protection, and brain protection. So let's look at some of the fears. Breast cancer, roughly women between the age of 50 and 70, roughly 23 out of 1,000 may get breast cancer between those 2 decades. That's a mixture of receptor negative and receptor positive. Let's look at the baseline and other risks. Smoking increases the risk by 3, 26 out of 1,000. Synthetic progesterone and oral estrogen slightly increases the risk by 4, so it goes up to 27 out of 1,000. 2 or more units of alcohol every day increases the risk by 5, goes up to 28. A BMI of 30 or above, however, increases the risk by 24, so it goes up to 47 out of 1,000. So that is the biggest potential risk. However, if you are on transdermal estrogen, so through the skin, and natural progesterone, your risk of breast cancer goes down by 4. It goes down to 19 out of 1,000. And if you take 2.5 hours of exercise a week, that's a brisk 30-minute walk 5 times a week, your risk of breast cancer goes down by 7. So it goes down to 16 out of 1,000. So there are things that we can do as women to support our health and support our risk of breast cancer. Is HRT free of risk? No, it isn't. Is not taking HRT free of risk? No, it isn't. It is about balancing the risk, benefit and risk. So it's about you knowing the facts, sitting down with your healthcare professional and deciding which way you want to go. Nothing in life is completely free of risk, but the benefits of taking HRT tend to outweigh the very small risk as long as you are on the right type. Another fear of a lot of women, sorry, I double-clicked, is stroke and blood pressure, high blood pressure. If you are at risk of stroke and you do have high blood pressure, then oral estrogen, so that's taking estrogen via tablets, is not recommended because the body metabolizes the HRT in a very different way than it does if we rub it into the skin and it goes into the bloodstream transdermally through the skin. So what happens when it goes through the digestive system is the impact is that it can spike blood pressure and increase the risk of stroke. But if we apply estrogen through our skin by rubbing it on as a gel or a form of a patch, it does not have that impact. So therefore, transdermal estrogen is safe for women to use who have high blood pressure or at risk of stroke, whereas oral estrogen isn't. So very important, sit down. As long as your blood pressure stays normal and healthy and you're on the right type, so in the half-day program or the online program, I go into this in a lot more detail, but as long as you're on natural progesterone, transdermal estrogen, every other health indicator is balanced and your blood pressure stays normal, there is no need to come off HRT. You can stay on it for forever. So that you can only be on it on 5 years is old news now. And now the British Menopause Society and the gynecologists who work with the British Menopause Society are seeing HRT not as a temporary supplement for women who are suffering really bad symptoms, but as a long-term health support for women regardless of symptom experience. So even if you sail through the menopausal transition without any adverse experiences, because of the long-term health benefits, HRT is still recommended as long as you are on the right one and all other health indicators are okay. There are exceptions. So it's still women who are sensitive to estrogen, as far as breast cancer is concerned, it is still not recommended. But there are other things that you can do. Because estrogen, once we replace estrogen, what that does, there is a window of opportunity of 10 years for heart health. So if you start HRT estrogen within 10 years of being postmenopausal, it gives you the heart health benefits. It protects, there's lots of evidence coming out now that it helps protect the brain from Alzheimer's and dementia, and it can reverse and prevent osteoporosis. As another gynecologist said in the summer, a woman of 70 and above who has a fracture due to a fall due to osteoporosis, 1 in 3 of those women will die within 12 months of the fracture, and up to 50% lose the gift of independent living. So osteoporosis is a really, really serious concern for us as postmenopausal women. If you cannot go on HRT, make sure you eat the prunes. It's really important. And a gynecologist stood up and said denying women HRT is a human rights issue, which is a very powerful statement. Quick word about xenoestrogens. Xeno is Greek for false. So it's estrogens that we put into our body that aren't naturally there. We do that with our food, but the ones to be really aware of are the things that we put onto our skin, so our makeup, our face creams and our body lotions. Bearing in mind, transdermal through the skin is the most effective way for us to apply our estrogen. Just be aware of everything else you put onto your skin. So be aware of all your body lotions, your makeup, your skincare, your shampoo, what have you. And make sure it is clean and has no parabens and no carcinogens. I put Tropic Skincare up there because Tropic Skincare on the Think Dirty app always scores green. So Think Dirty is a great app that you can download for free that has a traffic light system of green, yellow and red. And you can put it in the products that you're currently using to see where they are on that list. And everything from Tropic Skincare is green. So really start to think seriously about what you put onto your skin. It's really, really important. Quick word about bioidentical hormones. There's a lot of private clinics out there charging women an awful lot of money and taking blood tests and putting together a compounded recipe of hormones. The British Menopause Society is so concerned they've actually put out a consensus statement, and now they are saying that what you get from your doctor on the NHS is body identical, to try and distance themselves from the bioidentical markets, because the long-term safety of bioidentical compounded hormones hasn't been tested. Too much estrogen may be given to a woman with not enough progesterone to keep the womb healthy, so that's a worry. Also, long-term safety of reintroducing DHEA, LH, which is luteinizing hormone, and FSH, which is follicle-stimulating hormone, have not been tested. So you don't need to spend a lot of money. You can get what you need on prescription from your doctor on the NHS, and that is transdermal estrogen and natural progesterone. And remember to ask about testosterone as well. So this is a time we can get back in touch with our brilliance and really start to be congruent and start to connect with our values. Traditionally, there's 3 phases of a woman's life. I've added in the 4th one, and I've changed the crone to the wise woman because I don't like being called a crone. And I'm not there yet, so I've reintroduced the 4th one called the enchantress. I think this, for me, is one of the potentially most powerful times of a woman's life, when we can enchant our life to look and be and feel what we want it to be. We live by our values. We live by our rules. We own our brilliance. We own our power. We own how fantastic we are. We own the legacy that we are creating. And we can stand firm and strong in that center of brilliance and really, really get in touch with who we are as women. I'm not taking any nonsense, quite frankly. So we can enchant our life to be whatever we want it to be. I keep double clicking, don't I? So just remember, I know that at 60, I have more energy than I had at 30. I look better at 60 than I looked at 30 because I'm a lot more confident about who I am as a woman. And I think it's Pamela Stevenson who said, confidence is the sexiest thing a woman can wear. I feel fantastic as a 60-year-old woman. Okay, I'm still 59, but 60 in 9 days' time. So really own this time. Interestingly, killer whales also go through the menopause. And wait for this, when a female killer whale becomes post-reproductive, she becomes infertile and she has gone through her whale menopause, she is deemed by the rest of the pod to be, wait for it, the natural leader. So all those honking great male killer whales, that are probably 3 times the size of her, slip to the back and follow her because they respect her wisdom, her experience, and they defer to her age. I can't help thinking there's an awful lot the human kingdom could learn from the animal kingdom. So we are all like snowflakes. Snowflakes, what they have in common, they're white, they're cold, they fall from the sky. Every snowflake is unique. What we have in common is that we're all women, we'll all go through the menopause, but how we experience it will be unique. So information is power. It's about you finding the solution through this natural life transition that needs to be celebrated, that is right for you. We do a quarterly e-newsletter, which is free. If you would like to, called Midlife Matters, if you would like to sign up to receive that, send me an email and I'll add you to the distribution list. I also work with women one-to-one about their midlife reinvention. And we are about to launch, hopefully by the end of the year, our Menopause Demystified online program, which is our half-day session, which was filmed with 20 women. So you get to see all the questions that they ask. You get a PDF of a 48-page reference book, which is yours to keep. That we're doing a special offer for WeConnect of half price, and also a special offer of one-to-one coaching at half price as well. And I know I've rattled through this. I've never spoken so quickly in my entire life, but hopefully there's a few minutes left for any questions that might come up.
Katie, thank you so much. You've shared an awful lot of content, maybe at the beginning, slightly, but in a really good way. So thank you so much, and thank you for all of this, all of these extra offers as well. We'll make sure that we're sharing them with everybody after. There have been a few comments in the chat box as you were going along. The first couple were when you were talking about the supplements and different to take, and Lucy asked, is flaxseed good? And then Jenny had asked about what you think of soya supplements. So there was a couple questions around that slide.
Yeah, flaxseed is good. Flaxseed is good for omega-3, and most of us have an imbalance of omega-6 and omega-3. We have too much omega-6 and not enough omega-3, so it's good to get those balance right. So flaxseed oil, fish oils are very good. So omega-3 fish oils, because they're very high in omega-3s as well. So yeah, flax seeds are good. If you're going to have flax seeds, don't just take the seeds, because they're so small they will leave your body the same way they entered your body, because they're too small to be digested. So put them in a coffee grinder so they become a pounder, or flaxseed oil for cooking. And soya, because there's a lot about genetically modified soy, be careful, because we're not entirely sure what we're taking in. You can get that kind of phytoestrogen maybe from kind of tofu. In Japan, they've only recently had the word hot flush in Japan because of the amount of soy products that Japanese women eat. They didn't have hot flushes. It's only as they started to adapt more of a Western diet that they've had to introduce the word hot flush into the Japanese language, which is interesting. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. So there was one more on the chat box. So please, if you do have any questions for Katie, please do share them on the chat box here. Elizabeth has said that she had started her menopause quite maybe in her early 40s, and she's still she just wondered if you had any thoughts. I know it's a kind of a broad question, but whether you had she had migraines, and if there was anything else. I mean, you've obviously covered a lot of ground in the webinar, but if there's anything else.
Yeah, I mean, if a woman has the menopause from 45 upwards, it is deemed to be a natural age. Between 40 and 44, it's an early menopause. Under 40, it's called a premature menopause. And that can be natural, it can be medically induced, full hysterectomy, etc. So a natural early menopause is between 40 to 44, and a premature menopause is under 40. It is really important that women are given estrogen therapy because of the long-term health benefits of losing their estrogen much earlier than the average woman, at least a decade. So that's really, really important. Really good diet, make sure exercise to protect the bones, etc., etc. As far as migraines are concerned, some women have hormone-related migraines, and they can sometimes kick in for the very first time at menopause. They didn't have them throughout their periods. Then again, oral estrogen is likely to spike those, whereas transdermal estrogen will not spike those. So it's what we take in via our mouth that goes through the digestive system has a very different impact on the body than what we rub onto our skin.
Interesting. Thank you. I hope that helps, Elizabeth. And then Maria's asked, is late menopause bad? She's saying I'm 53. My mum had the first signs when she was 57.
Right. No, but actually, the longer we have estrogen going through our bodies, probably the more long-term health benefits it gives us. So, no, as a woman who is still perimenopausal at 56, nearly 57, apart from, frankly, I'd had enough of PMT and tampons, no, it's not bad.
Excellent. And then I'm just looking back at a couple of the questions that had come in beforehand. You touched on HRT, and somebody had asked if there were any advice around well-being without HRT.
I tried to cover that as much as I can. I mean, the full online program will go into a lot more detail, and the reference book you get as it goes into a lot more detail. But really, a good diet, make sure you exercise, have the right oils to look after your heart and your brain, eat your prunes to look after your bowels and your bones, get enough sleep, and try not to drink too much.
No, okay. And then somebody's asked a slightly different type of question, just in advance, which was around any tips for the days where motivation's lacking. She says, I've never had this problem, but I guess energy levels are sapped. Any tips on dealing with that when you're feeling like, nope,
no, can't be bothered. It's a duvet day. In fact, quite possibly a duvet week. Testosterone will help that. It's testosterone supplementation that gives you back your get up and go. What I found with testosterone supplementation, which you can't have without estrogen because you're further increasing the testosterone dominance, which is already there. But what that does is not only give you back your sex drive, but it also gave me back my mental clarity, my agility of thinking. So the speed with which my brain functions came back, and that waking up in the morning, throwing off the duvet and leaping out of bed with joy in my heart and a spring in my tail, that all came back with testosterone.
Interesting. Wow.
And it's a really, really important hormone for women. And it's always
and Anna, that's the question. She says, as with the ulcer, when you lose testosterone and other hormones, how can that, well, she said, enhance leadership skills. Have you got, or maybe the program goes into this in more detail around.
Sorry, I missed the question. What was it?
Around how hormones, how they can enhance leadership skills. And I guess, a lot of the participants today will be leading their businesses, whether there's any top tips for business leaders and how it.
Business leaders, well, we do it as well as menopause Demystify, which is all about the menopause and is aimed at women. We do another one called Supporting People During the Menopause, which Roger, my business partner, and I run together, and that's open to anybody, male or female, not necessarily leaders. It's open to anybody, and that looks at workplace best practice, reasonable adjustments, how organisations can appreciate the plethora of talent and expertise and brilliance that they have within their organisations, what they can do to support women, and the positive impact that it has on women, and how to make the most of whether a woman is a leader or not. That is covered under that training course, which will be filmed early next year. So by the spring, that will also be an online course.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you very much. Well, listen, we are right on the hour at 1 o'clock. Katie, this has been super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're very welcome. I know it's a hell of a lot to pack in.
Yeah. Well, it's a big thing.
People are now got a headache. Talked at for the last hour. But yeah, I'm always here. You've got my email address there. Anybody got any questions, please do reach out and ask and sign up for the newsletter. And if you want to talk to me one-to-one, I'm always here to support if I'm able to.
Amazing, thank you. And we'll share all this. We will share we'll PDF and share a version of the slides as well, so you can see that. And I'll get all the details from Katie to share about these programs and the special offers that's available to the WEConnect business. I just want to say thank you, Katie. That was great.
Welcome. You're welcome. I'm on a mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for letting me do
this. And keep us in the loop with all the different things, and when there's new, we can make sure to share them with everybody. Not everybody who's on the call today, but as you say, all the different contacts in our
absolutely. I will do. And thanks everybody for showing an interest and dialing in. It's great. And any questions, you know where I am.
Brilliant. And thank you everybody for dialing in. I wish you all a brilliant rest of your day, and we'll be in touch with a follow-up in the next couple of days. So Katie, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.